Welcome again to the Asheville Museum of Science Summer of Science series sponsored by Thermo Fisher Scientific, Hedrick Industries, Lancaster Law Firm, Baker Grading and Landscaping, Duke Energy Foundation, Holston Gases, and Gillespie Dental Associates. If you would like to sponsor Amos education programs, you can text Amos STEM to 44321 or visit us online at ashevillescience.org/support-us. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allie McGee with AVL Today, and we are here for the Amos Asheville Museum of Science's Summer of Science series. Today, we're talking with Executive Chef Bert Sheffield of Sovereign Remedies, which is a fabulous restaurant bar space in downtown Asheville, 29 North Market Street. If you are watching this and you're a local, Chef Bert, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It looks like you've got that full bar behind you and you're ready to rock and roll a little bit.
We're ready to do this. Let's roll.
Yeah, before we get into your cooking demo, which I'm so excited about, I'd love to know just a little bit about you and what brought you to Asheville. I read that you are originally from Louisiana.
That's correct. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I spent a good amount of my career in Atlanta, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. I would come up to the mountains with my father as a kid, and I fell in love with it then, and I'm still in love with it now. And I just decided to take the plunge and move up here.
And Sovereign Remedies, when did you come on board as executive chef there?
I came on board with the company about a year ago, helping the owner, Charlie Hodge, kind of get everything squared away, and just recently stepped into the executive chef position about 2 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about your particular passions, particularly with food science, which is going to be kind of the topic of today's video.
Yeah, I definitely have interest in fermentation and preserving food, which is really, really a big part of what goes on in our industry and how to make sure we can provide the most tasty, high quality ingredients that we can. And fermentation and food science go hand in hand with that.
Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be making for us today. I'm very excited.
So today I'm going to pretty much just cover the basis of fermentation and how I ferment things at home. As you can see over here, I have quite a bit of pepper mash that's been fermenting for a while. You'll see some different dates on these jars. Over here, I've also got some honey that I'm fermenting with garlic inside of it. So we're going to infuse that together in kind of a two-step process. And I'll talk more about that as we get further into the segment.
That looks totally delicious. I'm so excited. Yeah, so let's launch right into it.
Okay, cool. So fermenting at home is kind of a daunting task, if you will, if you're not familiar with it. And what I'm going to try to do is just give you some shortcuts and a little bit of assurance of how you can simply do it at home and cover some of these scientific hurdles, if you will. Let's just run down a basic list of things that you're going to need. Something that's really important to have in your house is a digital scale, especially if you're trying to do any sort of fermentation or brining or any kind of equalization, just so you know that your salinity is right. And we'll touch base on that too. Another thing you'll need is obviously some spices, a blender for the certain application to make hot sauce or make a nice smooth puree, which you can see here in these bottles.
I love those colors. They're so stunning.
Yeah, fermentation really brings out a different side of the ingredients that you use, and you'll find that sometimes you lose color and sometimes you gain color. So it's kind of a fun experiment.
And you know which one it's going to be? I guess there's probably a science to that as well.
Well, I guess it just comes with doing it at home and getting more familiar with the ingredients and how they react. That's the other fun part about it. It's a science experiment. You never really know what you're going to get because it's alive and it's constantly evolving.
That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. Yeah. Getting to the experimenter in all of us a little bit. Let's take a moment here and pause and take a really short break just to thank our sponsors.
The Amos Summer of Science series is brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific. Thermo Fisher is the world leader in serving science. Their mission is to enable customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. Thermo Fisher Scientific, step up, step beyond. More information at thermofisher.com. And Hedrick Industries, standing for quality and commitment to service. hedrickind.com. The Duke Energy Foundation, Committed to making strategic investments to build powerful communities where nature and wildlife thrive, students can excel, and a talented workforce drives economic prosperity for all. Duke-energy.com. And Baker Grading and Landscaping, changing the landscape while keeping with nature's flow. BakerGrading.com. Lancaster Law Firm, real estate attorneys for realtors, lenders, and homeowners. LancasterLawFirm.com. Holston Gases, your independent supplier of industrial, medical, propane, and beverage gases. HolstonGases.com. Gillespie Dental Associates, attention to detail, attention to your personalized care for your unique needs. DrTimGillespie.com. And member and donor support from people like you.
And we are back here. It's the Summer of Science series with the Asheville Museum of Science. I'm Allie McGee of AVL Today, and I'm here with Executive Chef Bert Sheffield from Sovereign Remedies. And Bert, just give us a recap again of what we're doing today.
So what we're going to do is we're going to combine two of the ingredients that I've fermented previous to this segment and kind of show you how we're going to have an end product of fermented honey habanero hot sauce. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it.
Sounds good.
This is a fermented pepper mash that we got started on the 1st this month. And what you have inside here is you have garlic, onions, salt, and peppers. And what's going to happen is this is where the fermentation process starts. Fermentation happens between the salinity ranges of 2% and 5%. If you go higher with the salinity, it's going to slow down your fermentation because it creates a little bit more of an aggressive environment for the bacteria to thrive. So when I'm fermenting at home, I try to stick in like the 2.5 to 3% range, which is about middle of the mark. That way you're not so low to where you have to worry about bad bacteria, but you're not so high that you're waiting forever for the hot sauce to be done. And a really simple way to do that is you use your kitchen scale that I was suggesting everybody have in their kitchen. And you'll get a total weight of everything that you're going to ferment. So for example, I would puree everything together, put it all in the jar without salt. I'd get my measurement in grams, and then I would take 2.5 or 3% of that number in grams. What that will do is spit out the amount of salt that you need to add to make sure that your salinity is where it should be in order to properly ferment. We have this nice mash that's been going for about 2 weeks now, and that's about the target time that I like to hit when it comes to peppers. They don't go too far to lose that awesome bright pepper flavor, but you still get that nice, funky, awesome fermented flavor from them as well. And an ideal environment to keep these in would be in like a kitchen cabinet, out of the light, out of kind of like moving around. That way it can sit and do its thing in peace. The second part that we're going to move into is the fermented honey garlic that we have right here. And if you look at this lid, I got these super awesome fermentation lids and these super awesome airlocks right over here from the Asheville Brewer Supply. So at home, if you're trying to do all of this awesome fermenting stuff, you can shoot down there, support a local business, and he can hook you up with all the great stuff that you'll need to ferment.
So the salt has been added to both of these, and they've both been sitting and just waiting for this moment of greatness.
This moment of greatness. Well, actually, the garlic honey doesn't have any salt in it. And I was going to go and kind of tell you guys how to make this right now. It's very, very, very simple. You take a nice mason jar just like this. You fill it about 3/4 of the way with raw garlic, and you just cover the garlic with honey about 2 inches and put this awesome little nifty fermentation cap and just cap it and let it sit for about a month. And what'll happen is the enzymes in the honey and the garlic will react and start breaking down the sugars and the carbs, thus giving you the fermentation. And actually, that's pretty much the definition of fermentation. It's enzymes or probiotics breaking down the carbs and the sugars, and they convert them to either alcohol or acids, or organic acids, lactic acid, which is one you'll most commonly find. And that's what gives the fermented products that really nice, awesome fermented tang. That's where that little sour bite comes from.
So that lactobacillus in my vitamin or in my daily probiotic is the same thing that's happening in some of these.
That's correct. So with that being said, that means that both of these delicious, awesome fermented items are also very good for you. So eat away for sure. So next thing I'm gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and prepare the hot sauce. I already have this mash prepared ahead of time, and I have this garlic prepared ahead of time because I didn't want you guys to wait around for one. So when it comes to cooking, it's all about taste, and it's all about how you like to do things. And today I really want to go for a pretty sweet, but pretty still spicy hot sauce. So we're gonna go about equal parts from pepper mash to the fermented garlic. I'm gonna throw this right into the blender.
Can I ask, as you're doing that, how many habanero peppers are in that giant jar?
That's probably 8 pounds of habaneros that we've stemmed and processed with a little bit of garlic and some onions. So now we've got our habaneros in the blender. We're gonna do about the same amount of the fermented garlic. That way we can have a nice, sweet, spicy fermented flavor going on in there. And if you're a garlic lover, this stuff is addictive as all get out. Once you make it, you're gonna make it again and again and again and again. It's great on salads. It's great for making sauces like this. It's also really good for healing. So if you're not feeling well, you just take a big old tablespoon of this and you'll probably be feeling all right within the next few days.
Feeling something with all that spice. I know what my weekend plans are now.
And also in the hot sauce, I like to add a little bit of vinegar. And what that does is it kind of makes everything stabilize a little bit. That way you're not worrying about your sauce continuing to grow and mature and making itself into a little monster that you don't want it to. So you're going about equal parts pepper, equal parts honey garlic, and about equal parts vinegar. We're just gonna run this through the blender at a high speed real quick to get it as fine as we can. All right, now, so we're gonna puree our fermented pepper, our fermented garlic and honey, and our vinegar together. Make it into a nice fine puree. Also, it's wise to just add a little bit of salt right off the rip because we know that we're gonna need to season it. So I do about a tablespoon and a half of salt right off the rip. If you want to get really fancy with it, you can add some aromatics. I add a little bit of cumin, a little bit of coriander, just to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more brightness. And some bay leaves. Bay leaves I love in hot sauce because they add that nice floral note at the back end. So we're gonna go ahead and blend this up. All right. Don't burn your eyes. It's smelling really, really, really good. That garlic is really coming through. The spice is really smelling nice.
That's beautiful. Wow, look at that color. So vibrant.
Let's give it a little taste and see what we're working with here. Definitely got garlic. Woo! Definitely got habanero in there.
So, Chef, now that you have created this wonderful, delicious looking salsa, what do you like to use it on? Or do you use it on everything?
You can use this whole process for marinades. Any fermented item is going to aid in the breakdown of the proteins. So it's really going to help you out. I also like to put it on pretty much everything. I like to put it on eggs, tacos, just anything you like to put hot sauce on.
Which is everything, yeah.
Which is everything, yes.
And if people come to Sovereign Remedies, again, at 29 North Market Street, right in downtown Asheville, can they try this and other lacto-fermented foods?
Absolutely. So I love to do this stuff at home. And I've had a lot of the coworkers and the server staff ask me for hot sauce. And they say that we should offer it here, which we've been doing. So if you come by for brunch and get the huevos rancheros, you better believe I'm going to have all kinds of awesome homemade hot sauces for you guys to use.
I am so excited to try it and to make it for myself. Now I feel like I can do it safely and I know exactly what to do. So, wow, thank you so much for that.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So I think we'll take another break, and then I have some food science questions for you submitted by AVL Today readers and other members of our community if you are ready to take them on.
Awesome. We'll see you in a second.
All right, we're going to take another really quick break right now and talk about how you can support the Asheville Museum of Science.
Thank you for tuning in to the Amos Summer of Science series. I'm Rachel Sparks, Board President for the Asheville Museum of Science. We're excited to share this series with friends and supporters. During the pandemic, it's important that we use digital technology to continue the mission of Amos to spark curiosity and a lifelong love of learning. Amos has shared online programs like our Daily Doses of Science and Ask the Scientist over 115,000 times with over 3,000 science explorers during quarantine. The Summer of Science series will share important science curriculum, and I encourage your support of our programs. Temporarily closing the museum has had a significant impact on our services and our finances. So I'm asking for your support with a donation of $40. That can sponsor 25 online engagements in STEM learning. Some can give more and some less, and any amount you can give will be very helpful. Please go online to ashevillescience.org/support-us or text the number on your screen to donate. Thank you so much.
And we are back talking with Chef Bert Sheffield of Sovereign Remedies, executive chef over there in downtown Asheville. I'm Allie McGee with AVL Today, and we're here for the Summer of Science with Asheville Museum of Science. Chef Bert, before we jump into some questions, is there anything else that you wanted to say about this wonderful salsa and this fermentation method?
I definitely want to cover a few topics. Fermentation is a very active and very scientific process. So with a lot of scientific methods, it's not something you can prepare and just ignore. You want to go ahead and look at this stuff every day, make sure you're not growing any weird bacteria, and making sure that all your equipment is working properly. You'll notice up here, I went to the Asheville Brewer's Supply and got some air locks. And what these do is they allow air outside, or I'm sorry, they allow air to escape the jar, but they don't allow air in. You want to ferment in an anaerobic environment, meaning that there's no oxygen. Oxygen is going to kind of throw things for a little bit of a spin, and you run the risk of developing a yeast or an alcohol, which is not really what you want in this application. And that's the difference between lacto-fermenting and fermenting for alcohol. Secondly, just make sure that everything's clean. Make sure you're wearing gloves, all of your tools are sanitized. You're really relying on the natural bacteria to compete with the bad bacteria, because all bacteria competes. So if you have a lot of really good bacteria, it's going to beat up the bad ones, and you're going to have a really successful fermentation. And as far as the salinity levels, it's really advisable to stay anywhere between 2% and 5%. Like I said earlier, I like to shoot for the 2.5% to 3%. It's done me really well over the past, decade of fermenting, and I'm pretty confident it'll do you well too at home.
That's really useful information. And I think you've given me the confidence to be able to do that math and figure out exactly what that percentage looks like as well with my new digital kitchen scale that I'm going to be using.
Perfect. I can't wait to try it.
Great. Let's hop into some questions. We had some of our AVL Today readers submit questions, as well as some other community members, all about food science for you. And a couple of them are actually on point for our topic today for the dish you just made. And you answered this just a little bit, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what exactly happens during fermentation that makes foods safe to eat. So I know you mentioned that there's this sort of kind of battle between the good and bad bacteria, but can you just talk about that a little bit? It's so fascinating.
Yeah, so what's essentially happening is inside the product that you're fermenting are natural carbs and sugars. And when you introduce the salt, such as lacto-fermentation, you're extracting all of those carbohydrates and sugars out. By taking the air out of the equation, you're offering time for the enzymes to convert those sugars and carbs into either an alcohol or a lactic acid. By having the acid in there, you're naturally preserving the food by acidifying, making it sometimes shelf stable and sometimes to where you can keep things for upwards to a year. So to answer your question in short, it's the enzymes that are breaking down the natural sugars and carbs and converting them to another natural preservative, such as lactic acid.
That's fascinating. So we have two questions that are actually about butter, and I think butter is always a good thing to talk about. So I'm just going to launch into those two questions. And one of them is from a local home chef that was working on a gluten-free pie crust and is wondering about the process of pressing or cutting in pieces of very, very cold butter into a crust. And I know from baking this is not just a gluten-free thing. So I was wondering if you could talk about why do recipes ask us to cut in very cold butter for things like pie crusts?
The idea behind cutting butter into a pie crust, for example, is to keep it light and fluffy and just super delicious. If you've noticed, if you've ever made a pie crust and your butter wasn't exactly cold enough and it get kind of warm, what happens is the fats kind of run into your dough. They don't hold themselves up, giving you that light and crispy, fluffy texture. It's going to give you more of like a flat, tough texture. And in short, it's really just to ensure that you're getting that kind of biscuit quality and that pancake quality where it's nice and fluffy and light. It adds a little boost of fat into the pie crust, and then you're not left with like a little flat, sad pie crust.
I have made that flat sad pie crust before, and it's got that very chewy quality. So that's when I personally realized, like, oh, this cold butter thing is actually really important. So the work you put into a homemade pie crust is absolutely worth it, is what you're saying, long story short.
Absolutely. It's extremely vital to making that picture perfect pie crust.
I'm still working on that, but I feel motivated. So
am
it's
I.
a hard job, but someone's got to do it and then eat the pie. Our second butter question is about clarified butter and what exactly it is and what recipes call for it, and if you can substitute regular butter.
So clarified butter is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's butter that's been heated up to a simmer or in time for the water molecules and the fat solids to separate. And clarified butter is that rendered pure 100% butter fats that are harvested from that. I'm going to take this one step further and compare clarified butter with ghee. Ghee essentially is a clarified butter that's been cooked longer, giving time for the butter solids to brown, giving it a darker, richer, nuttier flavor. As far as recipes that call for clarified butter, I'm sure that every chef would agree the first thing that comes to mind is the hollandaise. And the reason why you want to use a clarified butter is that you want that sauce to be very silky and smooth and luxurious. And you don't really achieve that texture when you have those butter solids and those water fats in there. You want to remove all that so the end product is super luxurious, fine, and smooth.
And really make your own clarified butter very easily, right? Just by sort of very slowly heating butter until it separates out. Is that?
Absolutely. It's very important to use unsalted butter. So you'll just take a pat of unsalted butter or a whole pound, and you'll heat it up on medium heat and just let it simmer for a couple of minutes or until you see the solids rise to the top, form into a little island, if you will, and then they'll fall back down. At that point, you'll let everything separate, and you'll just harvest the clarified butter from the top of that vessel.
Oh, and so a lot of it has to do with this silky texture and getting that right. Is there a health benefit to clarified butter at all? I'm wondering, because I know a lot of the paleo recipes will maybe call for it, or I've seen it in recipes that are sort of health conscious.
Yeah, you're removing those fat solids from the butter itself and from the fat. So really what you're ingesting is a very nice, clean, pure butter fat without the extra water and the extra fat solids in it.
Wonderful. So I wanted to actually go back to the hot peppers that you were just working with. And I wanted to ask a little bit, it's something I've always been curious about, is what exactly makes food and peppers spicy, and why are some people more affected than others? And I know species like birds, for example, can eat hot peppers all day and not be affected, but what is it exactly that makes them spicy and makes certain people more sensitive?
So the main thing that peppers have inside of them that makes humans react to that hot fire feeling, it's called capsaicin. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that word before, heard it used, but don't really know exactly what happens. And I'm just going to try to narrow it down because it's very scientific and it gets very molecular, and I love that. So essentially what happens is when capsaicin is introduced to your taste buds, it kind of fools your brain into thinking that your skin is in danger. Capsaicin is going to aggravate your skin. So your body throws these receptors at you saying, hey, be careful, this substance can harm you and burn you. And we've kind of learned to use that to our advantage. We also get endorphin rushes from it. It adds flavor, it adds depth to different foods. To answer your other question about how some animals can't taste spice like we can, the main difference is the amount of receptors that we have versus, let's say, parrots and chickens. I think the number, and don't quote me on this, I'm no scientist by any means, I'm just a chef, but I think that chickens and birds have about 30,000 taste buds, if you will, as opposed to where a human has almost up to 10,000. So you can imagine the difference of taste in a bird versus what we taste as a human. And that's why peppers affect us completely differently from other animals.
That is fascinating. I'm just curious, how did you come by all this knowledge? Is this something you've just collected over your years as a chef, or have you dug deeper into some of this?
I love math and science. I love outdoors, I love the nature. And these are the things that keep me up at night. So I will go down that rabbit hole of what makes something spicy, all the way down to the chemical, to just everything about it. I love to learn. I love to learn the theory of why things happen in food and what makes them what they are in our cuisine.
And maybe a last question, a good one to go out on, given the topic today, is what is the most challenging thing you've ever cooked, and why was it so challenging, and how did it go?
Well, I didn't necessarily cook this item. I love charcuterie and curing and dry aging meats. So the hardest thing that I ever cooked or prepared was my first batch of salami that I ground and fermented and salted. And the reason why it was so hard is because I was brand new to it. I hadn't been exposed to it on a first-hand basis where I was solely responsible for everything. So that first batch of salami that went into the cave was pretty nerve-wracking. And just knowing that it's going to be quite some time before you figure out, did I do this right? Does it taste good? Did I grind it right? So it was a big investment. And I have to say, I'm the biggest critic. It turned out okay. I learned a lot about what I was doing. And kind of going back to what I first said, it was really difficult for me because I lacked that hands-on experience. And this was probably about 12 years ago. Since that moment when I found it to be something that I could actually do, it lit a fire and I just took off with it. And I love every second of that. And it gives me the ability to use math and science and really apply that to what I'm cooking day to day.
And I am assuming that people can come and try your charcuterie at Sovereign Remedies. Is there a place where you recommend people start, or a certain kind, or do you just like to sort of throw a whole charcuterie board at them and let them dive in?
We have different offerings that go from local cheeses to assorted meats that are cooked and braised. We also have some that have been dry cured and salted as well. So there's a little bit for everybody. We also have a board that has everything on it. So if you're an adventurous eater like I am, you can just go for it. So we have something for all walks of life.
Well, thank you so much again, Bert, for joining us today for this Summer of Science installation on food science in particular. Love what you cooked. So excited to try it, both on my own and then come into Sovereign Remedies and taste all of the wonderful food for myself that you're cooking up there. We really appreciate it. Anything else you wanted to add before we close it out today?
I just wanted to say thank you, Allie. This has been great. ABL today, it's been really awesome. And I'm really glad that we can support the Asheville Museum of Science. I also want to plug a local business where you can find a lot of these fermentation vessels, which is the Asheville Brewer Supply up in Merriman. Ted is the owner. He's a great guy. You can walk right in there, tell him what you're after, and he'll point you in the right direction.
I'm going to go by and get all my mad scientist equipment, including my digital scale. All right, thank you so much, and we will see you soon for another episode of the Summer of Science from Asheville Museum of Science.
Okay, thank you guys.